Why do you do that? This is not a workout. You look very silly. What's with all the barefoot stuff? What should a serious coach think of you? You can't coach athletes that way. You have to follow the guidelines. You will fail.
It all started with the love for the sport of basketball. I love this sport. Up to this day, I do love it. There is this special love for basketball that only exists within that sport. Everyone who's a true baller can relate to that. Other people won't understand. I had this dream of becoming a professional basketball player. I failed. The dream didn't come true. I needed to start over. When I was a kid, I had this obsession of jumping higher. I'm not even 6 foot tall. I needed to be the most athletic person on the court if I wanted to make it to the professional level. I started creating my own training plans. I tried out everything on earth. I was 15 and I started to develop a coach's mindset. I decided to coach others on how to jump higher, became online entrepreneur at age 21, but over the years, one thing was missing: connection to the term of movement. Movement is so diverse. People want to put it in certain subjects, but it always fails. There is no such thing as separating. As humans, we all have the same set of muscles and bones, and we all come from the same source, whatever that is. That makes us more similar than different in terms of movement. Evolution made us the most complex movers on the planet. No animal is even close to being able to do so many different things. Look at crawling, swimming, climbing, throwing, doing handstands, just as an example. If you realize that, you see the world with completely different eyes. Working as a coach for high-level athletes, this puts you into a problem. One of my favorite exercises that no one knows, the dragon squat. People seem to not know where the real power comes from. Thinking linear. We work so hard. We do squats and deadlifts until one drops. And then we forget massive amounts of power while sprinting and jumping are generated through rotation. We use torque, and from there we fire. Boom. It is so crucial for every athletic movement, and yet coaches seem to neglect it. They just don't have this in their toolbox, and so it causes an athlete not to get nowhere near his or her potential. In the dragon squat, we do it like that. You can start assisted with the wall. Lean a little bit into it. Squat down one leg. Yes, one leg, so important. In all team sports and most other sports, almost every important movement happens on one leg, not on both at the same time. Go around and back up. Sometimes it is also comfortable to do it holding onto the wall where the leg is on the ground and moving the leg that is further away from the wall. Next level is that we do it without the wall. We go around again, but we put down our leg to not struggle with balance and to decrease the weight by placing it there. Next progression, we add a little bit of height on the heel. Here's a weightlifting platform, and now we can try going around, rotating inward, and not trying to touch the ground with the leg. And we go back. Last step is the single leg standing without added heel height. You work on rotational strength, standing on one leg, all the good stuff in once. And probably even with a little bit of a weight. You could also put a barbell on your back and you will have an amazing loaded mobility exercise. And all of them are usually not part of the repertoire of athletic performance coaches. Alright, let's do it. Everyone find some space, add some weight if you want, let's move. New challenges appear left and right if you want to go your own way. I wanted to talk to my assistant coach Maxi Borowy about this.
You're a sports psychologist in the making, my assistant coach for a few years now already. How would you describe the term of mind-body connection?
There are actually two parts of it. The first part is the thing that you try to be aware of your movements and of the things you actually do in this moment. And the second part is doing it on a long-term level. For example, your goals, the things you try to achieve, and all this kind of stuff. And that's the thing that describes this term for me.
The system wants us to train very specifically if we want to create top-level track and field athletes. What problem does that bring? Or create?
Yeah, the main problem actually is that the system wants us to focus on the technical aspects of our sport. So how does your technique look like at your high jump, at your triple jump, at your javelin throws? And the focus only on these aspects is a really disadvantage for all of us, and that's the biggest problem right now.
Okay, so you just don't have a foundation. You train the athlete on the athletic level. You can do that pretty well with your best training system that you have, but on the personal level there's no development, and that's like building a house with no foundation, right?
Yeah, and that's also the thing that brings us to the point where we have to do something that we aren't actually possible to do. Our bodies and minds aren't ready to do all this kind of pro stuff, but we should do them according to the system, and that's the main problem.
Yeah, and if you look at our athletes, at their training plans, what would you say is different to those of their opponents?
Yeah, actually pretty key points. We have a lot of more movements inside of our training, mobility, and all of other kind of stuffs. For example, my mental training is also a big part of it that isn't usual for youth athletes at this level. Also, our technical aspects aren't as big as the other, or for opponents it's a lot more focus on that aspect, but we don't use this as our main thing to do, but more the movement and the foundation.
And that also applies to the movement training itself, right?
Yeah.
That we try to learn something new all the time, that we are constantly trying out new things, switching up training plans, doing movements that others don't do, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the biggest advantage we have against our opponents.
And there we put everything together. We have something new for the brain and for the body, and then this creates something new.
Yeah.
Every natural system grows from randomness. So does our brain. It grows most when it is put into a situation that it hasn't been in before. Learning a new movement is the best thing to do for the brain. That's why we are so highly developed as a species. Not because of fire, civilization, or eating meat. Our brains grew through movement complexity. And as we know about the importance of the mind-body connection now, it's also great for our body and our athletic development. From the neurological perspective, sometimes it is referred to as Zone 1, the beginner zone. Our brain works overtime to find a solution for the new problem. We enter Zone 2 as soon as we become better at a movement, and our brain function regarding that decreases rapidly. Then we get into Zone 3, where we master a movement, and our body goes into autopilot. We only improve in small nuances, and our brain does not participate in there anymore. With that being said, where does most of professional sports training happen? Correct, in Zone 3. So how is that in pro sports? I wanted to talk to someone about this who has massive experience in the strength and conditioning sector.
Hi Joel, amazing that we can sit down and talk today. My name is Rene Weimann, and with me today is Joel Smith, the author of the sports scientific book Speed Strength, which I have here with me, and the host of the Just Fly Performance podcast. Hello Joel, welcome.
Hey Rene, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man.
You have been a triple and high jumper in college, and later you became a high performance coach. And one thing I noticed firsthand is that you have a very natural approach towards movement.
And would you agree that especially right now, do you feel you have an advantage over most other coaches and athletes when many tools are not available?
Yeah, so that's a good way of framing it, right? Like, and I've had discussions of this, and it's like sports performance is. So I don't know what it's like in Europe, and it's not like this across the whole United States or whatever. And I know people talk about like soccer, or football, whatever the technical term is for it, not being like a big weightlifting sport or barbell training sport. And then American coaches will come over and try to do that. At least this is what Mladen Jovanovic told me, I believe, and it just doesn't work out. But a lot of people here, it's just like, oh, what could I do without a barbell? Like, and it's just, this I think speaks to the barbells training and weightlifting is very quantifiable. It's something that you can put extra weight on, and it's very simple, and you see more force, albeit extremely general perspective, being applied each week. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to transmit that force any better in your sport. And so my hope would be that people are able to take this time to be able to become a better observer of human movement.
Okay, and from what I learned of coaches, especially in track and field, some of them, they are neglecting these playful approaches towards sports. They think a lot of their technical work, like hurdles, high jump, triple jump, and all the other events, and then they sometimes do not allow a lot of experimenting with simple human body movement. What do you think of this?
Yeah, that's something I've been super passionate about. I'm glad you mentioned it. And I had I had almost like an epiphany the other day, and I think a lot of this comes from new frames of mind and new perspectives, just from kind of doing some different stuff. And I talk about how we don't appreciate movement enough, but at the same time, I will proceed with this: is the human body is such an incredible problem solver that in some ways it's almost, and I might, maybe I have an air of like cutting on coaches who don't respect movement enough, but at the end of the day, I think that a coach that knows nothing about movement and just lets an athlete be and doesn't try to coach them and just coaches physical qualities, I don't think that's that bad. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because they're not. I think a lot of times when we coach movement with this thing, this thought that we know better than the athlete's brain, or we know better than the athlete's subconscious and how they're solving the problem, that's when there becomes problems.
I have a lot of youth athletes that I train with. and let's stick to track athletes at this point. And my feeling is, when the season is over, like here in Europe, it's normally some point in September. We have like a few weeks off, and sometimes they come to the track and we just play soccer or basketball or whatever. And then we start training again, I would say in the end of October at some point. And then with those kids that are, I would say, 18 or younger, we do not do any technical track or any technical work, hurdles, high jump, whatever they're doing at all for, I would say, the rest of the year, sometimes even longer. We also do not do a lot of indoor season. And we do a lot of different work, a lot of playful things, a lot of weight training, depending on the age. And these kids, they're just so fired up after this time in February, whenever weather gets a little bit better again, and they want to go out and set new records and try out new things. And I feel like it's super beneficial to them because they have this beginner mindset when they come back to their discipline, whatever they're doing. And sometimes they allow themselves to not make mistakes again that they made the season before. So I feel like it's super beneficial. What do you think?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, I have been working with the club track and field team for past 8 years now, and I'm not the head coach. I'm just an assistant. I show up a few times a week, and these are mostly just kids, like 8 to 14 years old. And this is the thing that actually, it kills me. It's like, it makes me sad, is that they're doing all these drills. Like they spend like 30 minutes warming up. The first part of the warm up is to run 2 laps, 800 meters. And shoot, if you're 8, that's like forever. Like that's like ridiculous. And then they're doing all these like A skips and B skips and lunges, and the coaches are really coaching them up on everything, like put your arms here and whatever. And they'll stop and like kind of like yell at them a little bit if they are doing it wrong or their attention is diverted, right? And then while all this is going on, obviously I disagree with this. While all this is going on, I'm watching the infield, and then the infield, there's like kids playing soccer. And I'm like, this would be so much better if all these kids were just playing soccer right now. Because this is stupid. This is just to maybe help the parents like think that this is training, or you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think some of the older kids would maybe be a little bit more ready for something like that potentially. But I think that so much more is found in play. And then, as to your point, I've found this out very quickly as a high jumper, that as soon as I made the transition from high school, where I was playing basketball and then track, to college, where it's just track year round, it's crazy. Because actually, the first time I really went to play basketball, after not having just not having played, but doing a lot of track training, I noticed I couldn't dunk like I used to be able to in high school. It was way worse. And it's just because a lot of it, amongst other things, is just you're closing down. You're really starting to close down variability. You're the more degrees of freedom, the more narrow you get into just doing a few plyometrics and a few, like you sprint this way, you do plyometrics this way, and there's no diversity. You're really, I think, especially from like a foot and fascial system perspective, but also just the excitement of the nervous system and everything else that goes with it. Not to mention the emotion and the excitement that goes into a team sport, because that's a big thing. Versus just training and just kind of, I mean, hopefully the coach creates a good environment, but all those things are it's just like instructions. And I like, it was John Kiley or somebody had talked about like as a path, like the nervous system's a path that either widens or narrows. And I think it should widen and narrow throughout an athlete's career. But so many people just narrow it the whole time. It's just like, and they think that's okay. And it's like life, like the stock market or anything else has ups and downs and booms and busts, and it's non-linear. And so I think that there's this, it's always a contracting and an expanding of degrees of freedom, of options, of, all the different little movements. And to be your best, I think you can't just like play basketball. You'd have to eventually get to doing track, for some consistent point of time. But there's always that interplay. And I've been, even when I was coaching track full-time, as a full-time track coach, we play games all the time to warm up, once a week, always playing games. And then when it was a competitive season, we would kind of stop. But even my kids would often be playing intramural basketball anyways in the middle of the season. And they would just do just fine. They'd be jumping fine or sprinting fine, no problem. Like, I think that was good for them. That doesn't happen, I think, at big schools, D1. This was D3. But my boss was critical of them playing. And I was always kind of like, meh. I think they're all right. Like, I don't think it's going to hurt them too bad. Not once a week or whatever. But anyways, yeah, just my 2 cents.
this just gives you so much more movement complexity, and I think it's great for development of an athlete. And when I sometimes see here in Germany, the biggest sport is soccer, and sometimes those big clubs, they get those kids at the age of 10 or 12, and they get into those facilities and they play soccer six times a week, have 3 games a week. I don't know if this is too good to just in terms of athletic development of a child.
Yeah, it's the control. It's one of those things where I think that we think like so many things. There's a well, even in this case, it's a quote unquote good intention. Like, oh, they're going to be the best they can be at age 25 if we do this now. But I think that in situations like that, I think that's just a lack of awareness potentially. Like, not people just don't understand that the body is meant to, there's seasons to life and there's seasons to training. And I've done a podcast with Sam Wiest, who's a track coach and an acupuncturist. And he talks about how even how our body's responses through different temperature changes in the year. And I just think there's just different seasons for what we are supposed to do, as well as just dopamine in the brain. Like when you play a new sport, there's a flood of new biochemistry, and it's just awesome. And it's like, it's almost as if these people, well, I know in the United States, and we are not immune to this in the United States. There are people who do this in the United States, and it's a pretty common like saying over here that the best baseball players here at age 12 are not the best ones at 18 because they get hurt. And this is a thing where if you look at human evolution, I think we're evolved to run. We kind of evolved to throw, but not to the point that we evolved to run. And so that's why for baseball particularly, just shoulders are going to blow up. They're just not meant to do that kind of volume. They need a break. Soccer, I don't have enough experience, but I would say, yeah, it's like, even just from the perspective of skill stacking, like if all you do is play soccer, Jeremy Frisch has given a great example, a colleague of mine, like one of the best soccer players that I think on a team he coached or worked with was a guy who had extensive background in judo. And so this kid was able to weight shift like way better than all the other kids, the way he would position himself. We don't think of this stuff. And I'm like, I think it's easy to tag it on selfishness, but I think it's just a lack of awareness. Like people just don't. But it's not just a sport problem. This is a everything problem. And I think that it's just to people just to let your ego down and look outside the box and to look at the athlete. Are you having fun? Do you enjoy this? Like we don't ask that question enough. We don't think of the human being first.
Knowing all of these things, in the year 2017, I went on a new journey. I discovered Ido Portal's movement method. Went to Barcelona, attended one of his courses, met the amazing crew, and when I came back, I did not feel as if I had learned some new exercises or something. Ido made me shift my perspective and the point of view towards movement. These people practice movement out of joy and passion. The system that is created here has a lot of deceleration. It's about slowing down, about less ego, less competition. But how does that fit together with professional sports? That was the big question for me. When you see someone like Ido, you think of all the movements and the cool stuff that you want to do. But that is all ego. It is not about one movement. If you only think about the movement, it is reverse engineering. And that almost always fails.
I saw people doing handstands like 4 or 5 years ago. I thought it's kind of cool. I want to try it. The next weeks I tried it out a lot. I watched a couple of videos on how to learn it, tried them, failed, tried again, failed again, and again, and again. Then I forgot about it for some time. Then the Ido Portal course happened and it absolutely shifted my perspective on movement. It is not about the handstand. It's about the journey. Again, I was so focused on the look of it and on Zone 3 training, discrediting the awesomeness of being in Zone 1 and loving the process of failing and trying to find a way. Making myself a better athlete along the way despite all of those fails. I developed strong shoulders just by playing with the handstand, month after month after month. It brought me so much joy, and finally I enjoyed every part of the journey.
One of my projects I'm working on for a long time now is coaching a youth track and field group that is fairly professional now. We have multiple national finalists in the small group. In March last year, we faced a very difficult situation with them. Everything was locked down, and especially the younger ones were extremely terrified about their sport. The big dream? Delayed. What about the future? No one knew what's gonna happen. But within 2 or 3 days of working from early morning to late at night, I figured out training plans that will give them the best quality of training possible. It paid off. We had a successful season. 2 girls finished in German finals in their disciplines. Most others had massive improvements and incredible seasons. My movement approach always played a big role with those talents.
So, what is your favorite event in track and field?
Hurdles and sprinting, long sprints, but I like everything.
What would you say is special about Rene's workouts?
I would probably say little details such as weight training and mobility and yoga. They all help very much.
A little bit of everything, right?
Yes.
You were quite an experienced athlete at your age. In your opinion, what is the crucial ingredient for success?
I would probably say failure. If I do mistakes, I learn from them. So if a competition is not going as good as I thought it would be, I can learn from it and what I can do better next time.
Do you think there are a lot of things you do that your opponents don't?
Well, training-wise, I think I do. I do a lot of yoga and mobility.
Would you say the movement-based approach is a key component for your personal results?
Yes, definitely.
And what do you enjoy most about practice?
Well, I love mobility and I love ESD also, and I love training with everyone. And
Do you think you could have met a better coach?
I don't think so.
This approach is way too powerful. For the moment, people can neglect it, but they cannot do that forever. Yes, I'm 100% sure that in a few years I will coach Olympic athletes. Why 21? For most people, 2020 was a year with a lot of fear and anxiety about their health, but also about a lot of other things like financial status, social life, and the future in general. As humans, we need time to adapt to a situation. 2020 gave us no time, and it brought us from one terrifying situation straight into the next one. Everyone experiences it differently, and not everyone can say from one moment to the next one, hey, let's make the best out of the situation. To have this mindset, you need to practice that too. Not only the movements and your body, you must also practice with your mind. That is a tough one too. And I want my films to bring that positive energy towards people, to make them aware of what is inside and around of them, to appreciate everything more and to learn some new things along the way. It's a new year, 2021. It's also the 21st of January. 21 always was some type of lucky number. Yeah, today is my birthday, yeah.
Movement brought me a great mind-body connection and an amazing community. This was just the beginning.